Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Ooh, yeah, this is this.
You're right. You did click on the right podcast.
This is indeed caffeinated crimes. Still,
Or you clicked on the wrong podcast. I don't know
in
which
which
one.
case,
You're still
welcome.
figuring out.
Hopefully, you like it here. We are great at intros. In case you did not already gather that, we are recording back to back because Courtney is going on like a 2 week vacation. Not really 2 weeks, but 2 weekends she'll be gone.
hmm
So we're having to double up so Courtney can do that.
Remind me to talk to you about that after we get done recording,
Oh,
too. I
okay.
meant to talk to you about that. I meant to tell you when I could see your face.
You
So,
don't want to make
um,
plans right here live on the pod for everyone to know where we're
I
going to
mean,
be
I
when.
could, but I'm scared you're going to have to edit a bunch, and I don't want to do that to you. I'm not going to be mean.
So we are recording this directly after recording what is for you last week's episode. So our discussion, because we've already been chatting for over an hour. So there's not,
hmm
which I say there's not a lot to talk about, and then we'll go on and talk for 10 more minutes because Courtney and I can always find something to chat about. Okay.
Well, the thing is, too, is I knew this was happening and I knew that we wouldn't have that many true crime updates that wouldn't have happened, last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I did find something that we could discuss.
Yes.
So there is a new Arizona law that forbids people to record police within 8 feet. So people can face a misdemeanor charge if they film an officer within 8 feet while questioning a suspicious person, arresting someone, or handling someone who's like engaging in abnormal behavior, whether that's like a mental health crisis or maybe whatever. So it is now a misdemeanor charge to do that. And so they're saying it's going to protect officers, but the ACLU of Arizona and the National Press
Mm-hmm.
Association basically are being like, this is not okay. And like the ACLU is like, this is just another law to like prevent police officers from being held accountable. Because like my thing
Yes.
is, especially so many Black people in America, when they're being pulled over, will start recording in case something happens. I mean, that's
Exactly.
how we see so much of people getting killed for fucking no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And now you will get charged with a misdemeanor when you're recording.
And then also maybe get killed and then nothing will come of it. So,
Yeah. So my thing is, I can maybe understand if you're a bystander and like you're coming up while I'm arresting someone or I'm questioning someone and you're like 1 to 2 feet away from my face. Okay,
mm-hmm.
I get that. But there has to be something in here where it's like, if you're the person being questioned, like you can record yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
or like if you're seeing it and you're only 6 feet away, like who's getting the tape measure out?
That's my thing too, that I'm like, who is the one that's like, you were 6 feet instead of 8 feet? Like who is determining exactly what that distance is if you're putting this into the law? And
Is it an
also,
officer who's just going to charge everyone who's in the vicinity with a phone in their hand?
yeah, probably. I just don't understand too, like, how does this protect police? Like, recording protects police.
Mm-hmm.
Like, recording shows that police officers are doing what they're supposed to do. I'm using a lot of air quotes because we know that's not what really happens, but that's the reason that they
But
have body
maybe if
cams.
you are
And
a police officer and someone's like, they assaulted me and, they physically assaulted me or sexually
mm-hmm.
assaulted me, and you do have on video like that didn't happen. Like we know that's kind of the minority, but it might happen. We just don't hear about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's protecting you. There you
Yeah,
go. You have video
exactly.
evidence. And like you have like, are they still gonna have their body cams, which we know they turn them off.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so what does that mean? The officers can't use their body cams anymore? Like, I don't know. This is fishy.
It is not okay. This is not, uh, I
A
don't
lot of
know.
organizations are reaching out to stop this because they're
Mm-hmm.
like, this doesn't seem right. This ain't great.
Like, what? Again, I just, if you guys have thoughts on how this could possibly protect the police or how this could possibly be a good thing, please let me know because I have no idea. I cannot fathom in what way this would be helpful to anyone, like other
Yeah.
than holding police accountable because they're not able to
Yeah.
get away with shit like saying, "Oh, they pulled a gun on me and so I shot them," and then you have video recording that is most definitely not what happened. Like the only thing that's going to come of this is that police can lie and get away with it.
Yeah. And like the only thing I could think, and I mean, please show me the cases where this happens, where
Mm-hmm.
this is necessary, is if you are just a bystander and you are instead of recording like from where you are, if you're like running up in the middle and like getting in between, like arresting someone or something, maybe then, but like when does that happen?
Yeah.
Like,
And
what videos that come out have we seen where they're like in an officer's face like this?
yeah, because it's like I'm pretty sure like you can't touch someone. I'm pretty sure that's just assault no matter what. Like if that's the case, if it's like, oh, you're like putting a camera directly in their face, you're like physically like intervening in this like police interaction, like I'm pretty sure that's already not allowed. So it's like, how would recording from 3 feet away change that? You know, I don't.
The 8 feet is what's suspicious to me.
Yeah.
And like the fact that it's like while questioning a suspicious person. So does that mean when you're pulled over for speeding, are you a suspicious person?
Yeah, exactly. Like how do you quantify this?
And yeah, and like maybe if it's like the handling someone who's engaging in like abnormal behavior, like if you're somehow getting in the way of this, like, which we already know police don't handle it well, but if they are handling it well and like you're getting in between, like maybe because like the guy who like came up with this law was like, well, if you're going to get 1 to 2, like within 1 to 2 feet of someone up in their face recording, like you're asking for trouble or something. And I'm like, but when does this happen? Like the videos we see are either people recording like themselves or their partner. Like you're also there in this situation, or it's from like a distance enough away. So it's like,
yeah,
what supposedly happened where you think this is necessary?
I mean, maybe there have been instances where that happens that we don't see the videos because nothing happened. I mean, you know, obviously we only see the videos where like something comes of it. If you like record a random interaction and then nothing comes of it, I'm sure you delete it off your phone and then you don't, you know, you're like, oh, let me record just in case. So maybe there have been instances of those where people are but again, I feel like the intervening part,
make it 3 feet,
yeah,
or like, make it an exception where if you're the if yourself, like if you're being questioned, you can still record yourself, like make exceptions like that. Like, I don't know. I don't see. I feel like if there was something big enough to warrant this law, like wouldn't we have heard about it?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure
Quote me if I'm wrong.
That too. So when you just ignore that was the first word out of my mouth. I'm pretty sure it's legal to record anyone in public at any time, right? If you were in a public space, I'm pretty sure. So why are police officers the exception? Like, I don't get it. I mean, because I think I've seen stuff where like people are uncomfortable because someone's at the park like recording their children, and it's like there's nothing illegal. Like if you were in a like it's not okay. Like I don't enjoy it, but if you're in a public spot, like there's nothing illegal. Again, as far as I know, like I've seen cases where like people talk about this and they can't be charged with anything. So maybe there's some like specific instances, but again, it's just police getting protections that other people don't have. So
yeah, it's just oof.
Not great.
We'll let you know because I mean, there are organizations trying to veto this and, you know, work against it, but we'll let you know if we hear anything else about it.
Yes, we will definitely stay up to date on those developments and discuss it more as it
unfolds.
Yes. Wow, I'm gonna stop talking for a minute and let Courtney just go right ahead.
I guess that's what happens when you have an espresso and you talk a lot. So, you know, it's time for me to take over.
Yes.
I'll take over for you.
Need you to pull your weight here, Courtney, because I'm struggling.
Ooh, that was like last week when we did the bonus. We recorded a bonus before we recorded my espresso. And like during the bonus, I was like, oof, how am I going to get through that espresso? Which I think I did okay mostly. Like once I got into it, I was speaking fine. But that bonus leading up, I was like, oh, Jelly-O. Okay, so this week our sources are A Real Detective Season 1, Episode 7, Vengeance, and two cinemaholic.com articles. So the jungle is a stretch of undeveloped land under Interstates 5 and 90 in Seattle, Washington. It is frequented by unhoused individuals who set up temporary camps. And in the 90s, police became aware of a serial killer in Seattle after the bodies of several young women were found in the jungle. So on September 12th, 1997, police received a call about a body found in the jungle. So the victim was a Black woman who appeared to be in her 30s, and her hands and ankles were loosely tied with shoelaces, and her bra was shoved in her mouth, and she had been strangled. So police also believe that she'd been raped as well, and there was a string tied to a tree next to her body with a beer can hanging from it. There was no purse or ID on her, and she was wearing expensive clothes, and they didn't think she was someone that would be like living in the camps in the jungle. So they interviewed people who lived in the camps, but no one reported hearing or seeing anything. And when the autopsy was completed, they determined that her cause of death was strangulation, and she had wounds on her knees, possibly from like falling while she was running away. They ran her prints and discovered the woman was 42-year-old Denise Harris, and she was a preschool teacher and lived with her boyfriend, James Cooper. So they interviewed James and Denise's mother. And so James said Denise had left their apartment a week ago because they had a fight and she hadn't come back. He didn't report her missing because he was like, I didn't think she was missing. I thought she was just mad at me and like wanted to stay somewhere else for a while, didn't want to talk to me. Like,
yeah. Which, like, if you get into a fight and you like leave your apartment, I mean, that's a reasonable, thing to think. And it's the 90s. You're not like texting people every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You don't have locations on their phones,
Yeah, not the same. So police asked him about his whereabouts during the last week because they were unsure exactly like when Denise was killed. He said he worked and then came home and stayed in every night. So detectives were immediately suspicious because James like hadn't reported her missing, and also that he seemed very calm when they told him his girlfriend had been murdered. So James contacted police the next week and said he didn't share this information before because he didn't want to say anything in front of Denise's mother. But he said Denise had left him for another man. And he said he went to a bar a few weeks ago and saw her with a man named Jason Rennie. So he was like, I didn't want to say this in front of her mom. Like, I didn't want to, say anything. But I didn't report her missing because she's with another man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm calm because she's not my girlfriend anymore. Like, what do you mean to do?
Yeah.
And he's probably also trying to play it cool. Like, yeah, okay, can't tell this bit of information.
Yeah. And like he said, especially in front of her mom, he didn't want to be like, oh, well, she just ran away with another man. Like he's trying to like be respectful and,
Yeah. So police went to the apartment of Jason Rennie, who said he didn't have anything to do with Denise. He said they were confronted by James a few weeks ago when they were having a drink at a bar, but that he wasn't dating her. He did pass a polygraph, and police were satisfied like he wasn't involved with Denise's murder. They're like, yeah, you're good. Bye. So they also received footage from the security cameras at James Cooper's apartment, which did show him coming home after work every day and staying inside his apartment until he left for work the next morning. So he was telling the truth. Like he came home, stayed home, then went to work. Typical, work week.
Right.
Sometimes you just
we all
go home
do.
and stay. Yeah.
I don't go anywhere on a weeknight.
I go too many places on weeknights.
Yeah.
So
Courtney's out here living her best life.
Maybe I need to take a play out of James' book and just stay home.
Andrew and I did go get dinner on a Thursday night this week. So
nice.
Look living it up. I know.
So police decided James was no longer a suspect in Denise's murder, and they are starting to believe that Denise was murdered by a serial killer due to the positioning of her hands being tied up with shoelaces, and that it appeared her body was like dumped in a different location from where she was killed. And then on January 10th, 1998, the body of 25-year-old Olivia Smith was found on the bottom of an outdoor stairwell of an apartment building less than half a mile from where Denise's body was found. So Olivia Smith was a Native American who had been living on the streets, and she did have numerous puncture wounds and a slash across her neck. So a few weeks later, on February 1st, 1998, the skeletal remains of 33-year-old Antoinette Jones was found close to Olivia and Denise's bodies. Her hyoid boing.
Boing.
Boing. Boing. Okay. Her hyoid boing. Oh my God.
Courtney, this is incredibly disrespectful. How dare you laugh at mispronouncing a word?
I know. How dare I? Whew, okay. Her hyoid bone was broken, pointing towards strangulation as cause of death. And she was wearing nice clothes and had possibly been raped. And shoelaces were tied around her hands and feet, as well as her neck. And her body was also less than half a mile from Denise's body.
So a few months go by without any information, and in April, detectives received a message from a man named Dwayne Lee Harris. So Harris was facing charges for a robbery and was seeking a lesser sentence in exchange for information about Denise's murder. So when he called and left the message, he told police that there was a beer can hanging from a tree near the body. So this obviously got their attention because this is such a minor thing, it wasn't a big deal, and they hadn't released it, in the media. So they're like, okay, maybe he does know something about this. So Harris said that he had witnessed the murder and he knew who had done it, but he refused to give any additional information until the detectives agreed to get him a deal. So the detectives refused at first because they're like, no, stop playing with us. We're not going to help you. But more time goes by with no leads. So they do decide to go back to Harris to try to get him to talk. So he does agree to give them information in exchange for a cappuccino. So in prison, you just got to get what you can get.
What you got to do.
So detectives finally agree, and so he tells them that Denise's murderer dumped her purse and he could tell them where. So they took Harris out and he led them to Denise's purse in a ravine near where her body was found. So records did show that Harris was arrested for the robbery the day after they believed Denise was murdered. So okay, it's possible that he did witness this murder, or maybe is even a suspect himself, although that wouldn't make much sense because why are you calling police out of the blue to say information about this if it was you?
Mm-hmm.
So the detectives finally agreed to waive Harris's robbery charges if he gave them a name. So he said he didn't know the man's name, but that the murderer was an unhoused man who lived in the jungle. So he described him as a big white man who had been in the military and said he had a tattoo on his neck. So after Harris described the man, police actually knew who he was talking about because they had spoken with him the night Denise's body was found, and he was one of the people who said that he didn't see or hear anything. But they did remember him and the tattoo on his neck. So Harris told them that this man told him he would get them drunk in a bar and then bring them back to the jungle where he would murder them. So now he's indicating that this man had to do with more than just Denise's murder. So kind of strengthening their serial killer idea here. So with this bit of information, detectives started going to bars close to the jungle and showing photos of the victims. So they're like, okay, if this is what this man was doing, maybe somebody here has seen them, has seen this man, can give us some more information. So one of the bartenders did say that she recognized Denise and said she had been there before. So she asked if Denise was all right, and the detectives told her that she had been murdered and found in the jungle. So as they were leaving this bar, a woman named Angela, don't know if that's her real name. They only mentioned her in this episode. Just putting that out there. But she stopped them and said that she had been kidnapped by a man at the bar a few weeks ago, and he had taken her to the jungle and raped her. So she heard this information about this woman being found in the jungle after having drinks there. And so she's like, oh, hey, I might know something about this man. She said that she had been out having drinks with her girlfriends when she'd had a few drinks with a guy that she met at the bar. She was then walking home when the man approached her in his car and asked her to get in. So she tried to leave, but he grabbed her into his car and took her to the jungle. She said he tied her hands and her feet with shoelaces, but he left them loose, and she thought it was so she would be able to run and he would be able to chase her. So he's like, I want to make this into a game. So he said he was going to kill her, and he chased her down and raped her. And she said an unhoused man who lived in the jungle approached them and scared the man off. So then she described the unhoused man as the same man that Harris had described. So now she's saying that this man that Harris said was the murderer was actually the one that saved her from this murderer. So detectives showed Angela a photo lineup, and she identified Dwane Lee Harris as the man who had kidnapped her and raped her. So when police confronted Harris, he confessed to raping Angela as well as murdering at least 3 women that he left in the jungle. So this man who randomly contacted police to say he knew about this murder was in fact the murderer.
The murderer. And he's just like, and then he just confesses. He's just like, yeah, I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I got a cappuccino.
Right? I'm just like, okay. Well, we'll talk about it in a minute. So Harris told police that he met Denise on First Avenue in downtown Seattle. He said that he did have an accomplice the night he raped and murdered Denise. Can't find any more information about this person, so don't know if that's true or not. Can't find anyone else that was charged with anything. He claimed that he and Antoinette had argued because she had stolen drugs from him, and then he choked her with a leather belt. He also claimed that he and Olivia got into a fight over a drugs for sex deal, and he stabbed her to death. He told police that killing was a hobby of his, and he got a thrill out of it. Gross.
Ew.
So Dwane Lee Harris went to trial for the 3 murders in 1999. He was very disruptive throughout the trial, yelling at the judge, the jury, the prosecutor, pushing furniture around, just like throwing this huge fit. And he was eventually put in a restraining chair for the remainder of the trial so that he was not able to move.
Yeah.
Harris was convicted on all 3 murder charges and sentenced to 94 years in prison. So when he heard the verdict, he laughed and he said that justice would never be served for his victims because he would be alive. He said, "I'll still be walking the prison yard. I still got radios, TV. I'm still going to kick it."
Oh, what a disgusting human.
Courtney and I are very anti-death penalty for the most part, but this is like,
it's one of those cases where you're like,
oh, I might be swayed.
Maybe we should have sent this one.
Yeah.
Especially when there's like no remorse like that.
Yeah.
And they're just like, haha, I get to live. Haha. Like,
yeah.
Ugh,
like
disgusting.
You've confessed to it. You've bragged about it. You've like, yeah. Harris also hinted that he had killed more women than just these 3. He does remain in prison at the Stafford Creek Correction Center in Washington today. And unfortunately, there is not much more information about these victims. So most of the sources and the detectives on the case just said they were all 3 drug users, as if that makes their stories like less important or that their murders should not get as much attention. Also want to point out that one victim was Native American and the other 2 were Black, which I'm sure plays into the fact that these stories are not told very often, that they were these low-income minority women, possibly into drugs, possibly not. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Possibly unhoused. And so they determined that their lives are not as worthy of sharing their stories and their information. There is also a book written about this that I did not read. I read the first chapter, but it was written by the detective who was interviewed in the episode of whatever that show was, Real Detectives, that I watched. But it was written like he like made it into a story, like a novel, and like he like puts thoughts into their heads and puts words in their mouth and things that I just don't agree with. And he, in the voice of another character, described the victims very poorly. So I chose not to finish reading that book. It is out there if you want to read it. There might be more information about the victims in it, but I doubt it. And I don't know.
And I'm sure it wasn't in a good light if it was.
Exactly.
Like, he's not being like, this was a literal like human who was murdered. But let's talk about the fact that they were a drug user. Like,
yeah.
Whew, it's rough and it's like really hard because it's like, oh, well, this was the 90s. But I mean, this still happens today, especially with the opioid epidemic going on. And it's like, you're like, oh, well, they were just killed by drugs. But then there's some cases where it's like, but was it that? Like they didn't really do drugs. And it's like, that's like the new serial killer method. I honestly believe it's just like drugs, basically. Like,
yeah, because if you just make it look like an OD and then it's like, oh, like sometimes I'm sure they don't even do an autopsy. Like, oh, I just found this unhoused person who OD'd. Like, okay, just are they identified? Okay, if not, all right, just send them on to the city morgue and yeah.
And I do feel like there's lots of groups of people who are trying to change this narrative and trying to talk more about, you know, drug addiction and all that. So hopefully maybe in the future we'll get a change, but just not hopeful.
Yeah.
Not hopeful as far as police officers go and detectives and stuff like that. I hope they do. I hope it does shift. I mean, I know they probably see like a lot of shit and they get jaded or whatever, but like, hopefully there's just a way to, I don't know, fix all this shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But sorry it was a shorter episode because again, that's all the information that's out there somehow for this serial killer. Like that just blows my mind that like, but again, we talked about it in the zebra killings of why do some cases get attention and others don't? And this was a Black man who murdered 2 Black women and a Native American woman. And again, I'm sure that plays into why this is not a widespread, you know, this didn't have a ton of media coverage, but that was the murders of Denise Harris, Antoinette Jones, Olivia Smith, possibly others whose names and identities we will never know. If you know anything about these victims, please let us know. Like we would love to share more about who they were as people, because it's so sad that, you're just remembered for your death and there's no information about who you were in life. So,
and like being remembered for your death and like in your death being like, they were a drug user, they were unhoused, like just such in like a poor light too. So yeah, please, if you knew these three women, if you know anything about them, like we will definitely like talk more about them if we have the information.
Yes. So Courtney, what is your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is Only Murders in the Building. Season 2 is now out. So they're doing it like on a week by week basis, which I do.
Okay.
Kevin really likes that. I like it too. So there's only 3 episodes out so far. So Kevin and I watched those yesterday. And it's pretty good so far. I'm already hooked of like what happened. I need to know what happened. Like what's going on.
The first season was so good. So I'm super excited for the second one.
The second one's really good so far. And I'm just like very interested to see where they're going to go with it and like what's going to happen. But yeah, so that is my perk of the week because I really love season 1 and I feel like season 2 came out very quickly.
I thought the same thing. I didn't even realize that it was like coming out. Like I like opened Hulu and it was like Only Murders in the Building season 2. And I was like, what? Like, when did this happen? Like, I feel like Kevin I just watched season 1.
He's like, something's coming out soon. Like, what is it? I think he was thinking it was Stranger Things. And I was like, because it came out like June 28th. And I was like, that's July 1st. And he was like, oh, it's Only Murders in the Building. And I was like, what? Like they already filming it? Like what's happening?
So quick. I love it though.
Yeah. So I've watched the first 3 episodes of that. It's really good. I do recommend watching the first season and this season. But yeah, it's really good so far. And let's find out who killed the person who died this season. I don't want to give spoilers in case you haven't seen season 1. So don't want to like put out a big spoiler there. And it's not one of those things where I can go, well, you've had time to watch it because again, just came out recently. So that's my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what's your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is just that my daughter has just been talking up a storm these last like few weeks. Like she just has all kinds of words now and just like you really see like her full-fledged like personality coming out and like being able to like ask her what she wants and she can tell you what she wants and then she can like point to things that she wants and like use words and sign language and just like full on communication. And it's just such a fun, like she's full on toddler stage, getting into absolutely everything, like running away at full force, like
a tornado.
Yes,
a tornado like, coming through.
Go all day long. Which I'm like, if you ever met me, I mean, she is my child. I should not be surprised. And that's when
now
I look
you
at her,
all get it. You get it. And we're all like, Jacqueline, sit down. Can you just sit down for a second?
So it's challenging to keep up with a younger me. But yeah, so that's just my perk of the week, that she has just been so delightful these past few weeks and saying all these words and she will say thank you every time you hand her something, or sometimes other random times. Like I told her she smelled like strawberries and she said thank you. I'm like, okay, sure.
You're welcome. Yeah. Anything's a compliment if you make it a compliment.
Exactly. So she's just so funny. It's just so much fun. And yeah, so that's just my perk of the week.
It's always fun when they get to that age where it's like, I can start like communicating again, you know, like we can start like figuring out how to like, you know, not like, just me talking to you over and over again, making conversation.
Yes. Like we're in that sweet spot where it's like, she's like a little more independent, but she's not yet so independent that she's throwing tantrums all the time because she can't like, so we're like in that sweet spot. So I know the tantrums and the terrible 2s and 3s, 4s are coming, but like right now we're in that sweet spot.
The terrible childhoods.
So we're just going to live in this as long as we can. So yeah, if you want to tell us about your children, if you guys are watching Only Murders in the Building, don't send spoilers because I have not seen it yet. But if you want to discuss season 1, we have both watched season 1. If you want to talk about, I don't know, all the things, your thoughts on this new Arizona law, what you think about that. I forgot where the sentence goes, even though we've said it 130 some times at this point.
You can find us on
Instagram at Caffeinated Crimes Pod, on Twitter at Caff Crimes Pod. That's CAFF Crimes Pod. We're on Facebook at Caffeinated Crimes Podcast. You can email us at caffeinatedcrimespod@gmail.com. We are on YouTube and TikTok and all those places. If you guys want some extra bonus content, some monthly Google Hangouts, pin, a sticker, a Discord, monthly video episodes now, if you want to see our faces and get the unedited version of the podcast where you get to hear all the other things that we say and do, and maybe see some animal or children appearances or whatever. You can do all of that on patreon.com/caffeinated crimes. We do have tiers going from $3 a month up to $20 a month with different benefits at each level. So check it out and see what we have there. We'd love to have you for a long time, for a few months at a time. Come and go as you please, whatever.
Yep. Whatever best suits you and your finances.
Yes.
And if you wouldn't mind to just review us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, just give us 5 stars. It helps us get recognized, helps people see us. But yeah, in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.